8 Indian Navy veterans who had their death sentence commuted to prison term in Qatar have been released. The government says that 7 of them are already back in the country after an 18-month jail stay in the Middle East country. The government of India welcomes the release of the 8 Indian nationals working for the Dhara global company who were detained in Qatar. 7 out of the 8 have returned back home to India. We appreciate the decision by the Amir of the state of Qatar to enable the release and the homecoming of these nationals, is what the foreign ministry had to say. We are very happy that we are back in India safely. Definitely we would like to thank the Prime Minister, as this was the only possible because of his personal intervention, is what is being said by the veterans who've come back home.
वापस इंडिया पहुंच गए हम सेफ एंड साउंड और डेफिनेटली ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर श्री मोदी को धन्यवाद करना चाहेंगे कि उनके पर्सनल इंटरवेंशन से ये पॉसिबल हुआ, और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ कतार के हिज एक्सेलेंसी द अमीर को कि उन्होंने ये होने दिया, एंड बस यही बोलना चाहेंगे. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
So, this is very good news coming in, and there you can see we just heard one of the veterans talking about this is the Navy veteran who has been released from Qatar. Of course, very, very good news. They're back home. This is 8 Indian Navy veterans jailed in Qatar over alleged spying charges have been released. The government has, in fact, made that statement. 7 of them are back home. This is after an 18-month jail stay in the Middle East country. The government there, has definitely the veterans there thanking the Prime Minister, saying that it's because of his intervention that this was possible. To remember, sentence was commuted, and they were meant to serve a jail term as far as this case is concerned. Of course, something that the Indian government has in fact been trying to get these 8 veterans. There was a major diplomatic triumph when it comes to India. These 8 veterans of the Indian Navy who were sentenced to death in Qatar were released by Doha. In fact, that capital punishment was commuted to an extended prison term earlier following that diplomatic intervention by the government. Now, amid desperate pleas by anxious family of the veterans to secure their release and safe passage back to the homeland, the ministry has now finally managed to get 7 of the jailed Navy veterans back here at home here in India. We have my colleague Vishnu joining us to get more details. Vishnu, 8 of the 7 are said to be back home in India. What about the 8th Army veteran?
Said to be back home. And the statement of the government of India actually says that all 8 have been released. I'm just going to read out that statement of the government of India. It says, the government of India welcomes the release of 8 Indian nationals working for the Dhara global company who were detained in Qatar. So this essentially means that all of them have been released. 7 of the 8 are back home. I do know that one of the families had a link abroad. They had family abroad. So I just need to understand whether that family has, that member, that officer has actually gone back, I believe, to the United States, or they've come back here. That's something that at this juncture, we do not know. But this is extremely welcome news. It comes at a time when there was a great deal of understandable anxiety on the part of the families, because it's been more than a year since these 7 officers and 1 sailor were detained in Qatar on allegations of spying. That finally has been overturned. The death sentence which they received has been commuted. It had been commuted, and they are now back in the country. The involvement of the Amir of Qatar has been indicated in the statement of the government of India, which says that these men who were working for the Dhara global company, 7 of the 8, have returned to India. We appreciate the decision by the Amir of the state of Qatar to enable the release and homecoming of these nationals. So there was a process which was taking place. They had been sentenced to jail. There was a constant process of appealing that. And finally, there is welcome news now for these families who've been waiting for so long. There are no further details on this. It's difficult to know what exactly happened, the circumstances in which they were arrested, because all the allegations of spying have been denied altogether. These were men working for this company which was involved in training of the Qatar Navy. And it was, they were carrying on with their duties. Something took place, the details of which have never been really disclosed. But the good news now is that they're finally back in India. It's been more than a year since they were picked up, put in initially into solitary confinement. The process of getting consular access took time. Finally, that did take place. There was a huge surprise when they were actually sentenced to death. There was a process of appeal. The Prime Minister met the Emir of Qatar on the sidelines of the COP28 meeting, the environment meeting in Dubai. Subsequent to that, they returned to jail, but now there has been this very welcome release. All eight, as I understand it, have been released. 7 of the 8 are back in India.